Thanks for tuning into the Hidden Tracks podcast. You can find us wherever you find podcasts or listen to music. When you have an opportunity, please give us a 5-star review, write a little note, tell us how we're doing. We really appreciate it. It helps us keep this thing going. If you want to reach out to us, you can find us at Facebook at Hidden Tracks. Instagram is at HiddenTracks99, and if you'd like to send in submissions or talk to us or give us any feedback about what we're doing, our email is myhiddentracks99@gmail.com. Thank you so much again for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome again to Hidden Tracks. This week I have Nick Woods from the amazing pop punk band Direct Hit. Great pop punk band. I actually had the opportunity to see them in San Diego when I was traveling at the Soda Bar. They opened for the Smoking Popes, and it was pretty awesome. And I'm really excited to have Nick here today. How you doing, Nick?
I'm good. How are you doing, Shane?
I'm doing great. So yeah, I saw you guys open in San Diego in my travels, traveling around, and saw Smoking Popes were playing. I was like, oh, cool. Went and saw you guys open and was really impressed.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it. It's a cool show. Like playing San Diego a lot. It's awesome.
Yeah, it was a great vibe in there. I brought some people too that had never heard of any of the bands on the ticket, and it was nice opening up their horizons to new music as well.
Cool.
So let's get down into it, man. Pop punk, punk rock. I mean, is this your genre that, you know, we don't like the genre label, but you got to fall into some place so people know what to expect a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, is this your favorite type of music to not only record but listen to?
It's it's tough to pick a favorite. There's lots of music, man. You know, I write what I write, and that is sort of just the style that I gravitated toward or that I fit into. You know, it's like you said, I don't like to really pigeonhole myself. I like a lot of different kinds of music, and I'm inspired by a lot of different kinds of music. And I would probably argue that most other artists are too. It's rare that you meet a group of musicians or something like that who only listens to one defined kind of sound. But I tend to gravitate toward simple music, simple and loud music, I would say. And that's not to say that something else isn't complex or something like that. And it's not to say that our music can't be complex. But in general, I've always appreciated very simple, I guess just kind of ideas in general. The stuff that when you see it, you wish that you don't wish, but you're upset that you aren't the one that thought of it.
Yeah,
it's obvious. My favorite songs are always the ones where it's like I know the song even before I've heard it. It comes on the radio and I can guess the melody that's coming up next, or you know, I know the hook by the middle of the verse, and I have an expectation of what the chorus is going to be or something like that. Those are always my favorite songs.
wow.
And they become my favorites, I think, when that happens and I haven't heard the music yet, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's sort of, I guess, what I'm always trying to do, is to make music that's both new and, you know, inherently familiar, something that touches people even before they've had a chance to experience it. And I think all great artists are able to do that in one way or another. Yeah. I'd argue.
Now, we just went through a crazy time, probably the craziest in your life and my lifetime. And as an artist who travels a lot, plays a lot live, records a lot of music, I mean, how was that for you? I mean, you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but what 2020 was in the, months after it too, we were dealt with some crazy stuff. Now, were you guys on tour or looking to go out or recording? What was going on with you?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, I'd almost argue that it wasn't like last year was like the terrible head on the iceberg that has been basically like the last 4 years almost since Trump became president. Um, I think I think in the years leading up to 2020, there were a lot of really harsh realities that came to bear on artists and musicians and people in the U.S. at large about who we were and how we related to other people, and um, just kind of the position that our society was in. I'm sort of the first to admit that I was pretty embarrassed when Trump got elected, and I don't really think that he was the cause of all of our problems. I mean, I definitely don't think he was the cause of all of our problems. I think that he was the symptom that kind of woke everybody up after Obama was president for 8 years, when everybody kind of thought that like we'd entered this utopian age where every problem surrounding race and poverty and authority and free will and all this other stuff had just been completely solved. Like we were beyond all of those terrible problems, and it was
Yeah, I
really,
mean, everyone's complacent, with
yeah,
stuff, and I'm one of those people that I've always said, listen, everyone has problems, and no one's are worse than anyone else's. It's just how we choose to deal with them, and that's where we are today, where people are choosing different ways to deal with them, and ways that not everybody agrees on how to deal with stuff, and
yeah,
it tears us apart at times. So
yeah, yeah. And I think 2020 was, I guess, the pragmatic or the practical or like the hard fast truth about where we actually were as a culture and as a people. My wife and I had a talk about sort of talked about this the other day. Is um, the one thing that we managed to figure out from the last year basically is just how to keep working.
yeah,
And that's a pretty disappointing outcome, I think. It's really difficult to watch how little support there was for independent venues, for artists, for the communities that supported smaller artists. And I think that was the hardest part of having to go through it. Is realizing, I guess, how little economic value at least recorded music has in 2021 and last year. We had tons and tons of plans to. I think we were planning on spending 5 weeks in Europe last year. It all got canceled. We had, probably a dozen headlining shows or supporting shows that we had set up that were supposed to happen last summer. The festivals that we usually do, those didn't happen, obviously. And it was, it I wouldn't say that it was surprising, but it was definitely a hard pill to swallow. How little support there was from people outside of that community of punk rock, I guess, that we've existed in. We heard from people all year long, and all of our, I don't like calling them fans because that I feel like that's really self-aggrandizing, but people who enjoyed our music and had listened to it, everybody has been very supportive. We put up t-shirts on the internet to sell. We put up just we played live on the internet a few times as a band, but I mean, none of that really, I guess, acted as an appropriate substitute for being able to play live, because that's always what we like being able to do. And the fact that a lot of the venues that we were used to playing, and that the people that run those places who we're friends with, that sort of those places have shut down, livelihoods have gotten taken away. I mean, it was very difficult to watch all of that happen.
yeah,
And it was
it's tough, and I mean, at that time too, like, I was worried about that, and I was supporting, I live outside of New York City, and there's, two of my favorite venues, Bowery Ballroom and Mercury Lounge, owned by the same people. But I was like, anytime I had some extra money, I was donating to keep, because I was like, I can't watch this go away.
Yeah,
But
exactly. But I think you and me are sort of in a position where independent music, a DIY attitude is something that's mattered to us for our whole lives.
yeah,
We're those kinds of people, and so we're predisposed to supporting that. And I think something that we learned, I guess, to connect this back to the thought of, or why it is that I sort of started with like the previous 3 years or 4 years being so awful, is that you knew watching that our community is not reflective of the world at large, that sort of everything that I could do to try and save the stuff that mattered to me when it came to independent music and things like that wasn't going to be enough. And the community that sort of revolved around those places, try as hard as you can, had to make a lot of hard choices about where they were going to donate money and how they were going to support other people. And you just knew that the environment that you grew to love and care about and work in just was not going to be the same afterward. And I think the last year required a lot of hard thinking from a lot of musicians about how they were going to operate, how they were going to keep making art, and how they were sort of going to get back to that routine and that comfort that came with playing in independent venues and playing music live and meeting with people all over the world, all that kind of stuff. It was a lot of worry and anxiety, for sure. But I mean, it's not like that's without silver linings, I guess. I learned a lot of new stuff during quarantine. I reconnected with a lot of people that I hadn't talked to in a long time, during quarantine in different ways than I would have otherwise. You get a way better picture of who is really a lifer and who's really supporting these places and these communities, and who's just kind of hanging on to party. I don't think it was without its graces, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that was going on, and everyone trying to figure out certain things. But I do think, I mean, you brought up that good point that silver lining was I kind of started to figure out. I guess you can say who my tribe was that was, always going to support me.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
and that was that was the best feeling to get out of it, was like, oh wow, they do actually care.
There's still people that are still sticking around. And I never expected everybody to drop off the face of the planet, but it definitely gives you a sense of who your real friends are and who's going to make the effort to make sure that you're okay and that you're supported. And it also makes you look inward. And if you're sitting on the couch for 2 hours with nothing to do, and you think back about who it is that you've been talking to, it makes you a better friend and a better person and a better supporter too. To really think about who it is that you've been talking to, and makes you wonder who's okay and who isn't, and who you've heard from in a while. And I think all of those were good parts of the last year, I guess.
Yeah,
It was sort
definitely.
of
I
like
mean,
a hard reset button pressed on it, but it's tough to be playing a really cool game and then hit the reset button on your Nintendo and have to start all over again in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I learned the difference between I think need and want, and I've been working my way this whole past year to say, okay, I need this, but I wanted this, and putting them into piles and just saying, okay, this whole want thing is just it can go to the side for now. Like
Yep.
I don't,
Yep.
and I didn't realize it, because at the time I thought I needed it, but it was really a want, and that was what I got out of it, was figuring little things out like that.
Yep, definitely. Did you start this podcast during quarantine, or did you start it after or beforehand?
No, I started it during it, because what I missed most was talking to people about music. I missed, the live music. I loved going to shows. I went to a ton of shows every single month. It was it was my want, but it was also my need because I needed it and I needed to interact with people. And I loved talking about music with people. My favorite thing was meeting a stranger at a show and for an hour after the show, just talking about music and bonding over something that we had together. Like
Yep.
that was awesome for me. And I missed it so much. And I was like, you know what? I got to figure out a way to do this because I know there's other people out there like me and who are bands and who need, enjoy talking about not only their music but music in general, and maybe need some help right now.
Yeah.
And that's where this came from. And it was just trying to help your music get out there and other people's music get out there and talk about things.
Yep.
And because that's important. And I don't think enough people take the time to actually tell an artist or talk to an artist and say, hey man, what you're doing is totally fucking worth it. Don't stop.
I appreciate you saying that. I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that like you learned how to do something new during quarantine, right? And this was, I guess, sort of a way, I would assume, at least with this podcast, it's a way of like you just said, a way of reflecting on what it is that matters to you in particular. You learn little new skills along the way, and you come out with something that's a little bit, I guess, a better version of yourself. At least I hope it's a better version of yourself when you come out of quarantine than you did before.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
And I mean, that was my big determination when this whole thing started. I've got a 5-year-old daughter. I've got a house. I've got a partner, and I didn't expect. I don't think anybody expected that they'd be locked in their houses for, a year straight and wearing masks at the grocery store. My daughter was supposed to start junior kindergarten last year. And, we got to like a month into quarantine. And I remember being in the car and my wife telling me, what happens if she doesn't go back to school in the fall? And I told her, you're crazy. Like
Yeah.
there's no way that they're not going to start school in August, and I when we sort of got word of that and started getting the idea and the picture that, this wasn't something that was going to be done in another month or two. And we didn't really know when it was going to be done. I was very determined when I started that I was going to come out on the other side of this as a better and more skillful and empathetic person than I was when I went into it. And I was me personally, and I by the sound of it, if you started this podcast during quarantine, you were too. I sort of had a hard thought about what I wanted to learn about and what I was going to do if pressing that reset button, was going to put me in a position where I wasn't going to be able to play live music anymore. Or I wasn't going to be able to make music anymore the way that I wanted to. And so I got started very quickly at the start of that, sort of figuring out what that was going to be like if I was starting from scratch again, what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it and what I would need to do to get there. And, I think our band is fortunate enough that we have the support and we have a lot of great people that come out to see us play and buy our stuff and listen to our tunes. That we're lucky to not have to start from scratch again, at the same time, I'm anxious to see sort of what position we're in when all this is over. And when we start getting back to playing live again, which we're supposed to start doing in August. So that's my big long speech. I've been talking a lot. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, listen, this is what it's about. I enjoy listening to the story and I want to hear, and I truly want to know. That's why you're on this show. That's why I asked you to be here, because I want to know how it was for you. And if anybody else can learn something from it, is important. And, especially you brought up the point of, being an artist and not having that full support and feeling different. And your artistry brings so much joy and happiness to the world, and that there isn't that support, but there's enough support to be like, oh, this bank made some really bad investments. Let's help them out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff where it's important to hear, and people need to know that, yeah, whoever they think you are because they own your CD or your vinyl, or they bought digitally downloaded your album, and they think they're supporting you, but are they really? And maybe there's a tiny bit more that they can do. And
You
even
know,
if it's just saying, man, hey, we really appreciate what you're doing, something as little as that, people don't realize how much it actually means to someone.
yeah. Yeah. And I think the hardest question that I had to really ask myself um coming out of it is, what if all of this is gone in another year? What if live music doesn't come back? What if every venue and like sort of like the anxiety ridden person of like the worst case like exercise, right?
Yeah.
Now, what if every independent venue closes down, and uh every record label closes because nobody's buying music anymore? What if, touring just isn't a thing anymore? What if I come out and people realize there's like new kinds of music that they can listen to that doesn't involve like a white man with a guitar?
Yeah.
What am I getting out of this? Why do I want to keep doing it? And I think it was a pretty quick answer, and that was like, I like making music, and I like making things in general, just for the sheer joy of it, of creating something that's usable, that I can share with other people, even if it's not a lot of people, even if it's just my kid or my wife or my friends. Like, I live in Milwaukee, all my friends in Milwaukee. Is that enough? And the answer was definitely yes. Um, and then the
That's awesome.
question, and
That's
and
awesome.
and the question sort of became, um, if I want to be able to make music for just my friends or just for myself, even if nobody cares about the thing that I'm doing, and I just want to make it because it's a part of me and I want to be able to produce it, how do I go about doing that? And that was a little bit more of a nebulous question. And that sort of became my entertaining thought exercise over the last year, is what do I, if I'm doing something for myself, if I'm working on myself to be a better person, what do I need? What resources do I need to do that? What skills do I need to learn? And I spent most of quarantine figuring that out. I learned how to produce my own music. Um, After working with other outside engineers and producers for the last 10 years, I had already been learning how to write computer programs because I hated working in marketing. And so I dove even deeper, I guess, into learning how to write computer stuff so that I would be able to produce, I guess, richer content on the internet. I learned how to live stream off of a camera. I learned how to produce, a live broadcast. I learned, how to sort of garden at least a little bit. I planted a bunch of trees because I wanted trees at my house. It was definitely one of those things where I asked myself, what is going to bring me joy if all of this goes away? And I spent the last year figuring out at least a little bit of how to do it. And that was really what got me through it. Focusing on my family was a big part of it too. And 6-7 months in, you would have those, or I would have those days when, it was overwhelming to think about sort of what I might be losing, by not being able to tour and perform live for a little while. But ultimately, it came down to sort of figuring out what I was going to do in the unknown after it was all over. And that was my, I guess, coping mechanism for getting through it. Is using that time that I would have spent touring otherwise, figuring out a little bit more about myself and what I wanted to learn about and what I wanted to do. And that I guess is what sort of helped me along the way.
Yeah.
Along with discovering, what we just talked about, who all my friends were, making sure that I kept up with all of them, reconnecting with people that I hadn't talked to in a long time, thinking about myself and my mental health a little bit more than I had before. All that stuff was very helpful, I think.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you did a great job at just taking the time to better yourself a little bit, and in the hopes that many more people out there, since still not around thousands of people at a time, but in the hopes that other people took that time and used it, to the best of their ability.
I am sure that most people did. I call them COVID trophies now. Things that you won during that quarantine period that are yours now because of work that you put in. You've got this podcast. That's an awesome COVID trophy that you walked away with.
Yeah, no,
that you wouldn't have without it.
I think about it all the time. I mean, I talked about this for many years about starting it, and I worked so hard in my real everyday life that I just never had the time to do it. And now that I was able to start it and work through everything, that now that I still work really hard, I still have time to do this. And I learned other things that I never would have learned. I never would have learned how to record and how to get in touch with people to be on the show, and how to do post-production and how to add things here and there. I never, it was always a pipe dream, and this is my trophy. Our year anniversary is coming up soon. And it's like, I never thought I'd be where I am today, but it just goes to show that, listen, you just buckle down and figure things out as you go, and nothing has to be perfect the first time you do it. And if you try to do something perfect the first time you do it, that's when you fail, and you don't 100%. Learn from anything. Yep. So, I mean, this is definitely my trophy, and it's brought me together with so many people. It's also brought my family close together, my wife and I close together, my friends and everyone, and it's kind of like it kind of was a selfish thing at first because I missed something. And now it's it's like a selfish act in the same, because I know I'm bringing enjoyment somewhere else to somebody wherever around the world that may be wanting to hear Nick Woods' story, and that to me is important, and that I appreciate that.
Yep. It's and it helps that you don't constantly have people telling you to go out to the bar for a year straight too. Makes up a lot of time, I think, when you would have otherwise been just getting wasted.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So I want to start your life's journey with. Do you remember your first musical memory when music changed for you, when it was no longer like Sesame Street or Barney sing-alongs, and you heard like real music for the first time? Do you remember that point in your life?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like it was yesterday. I tell people about it all the time. I was 3 years old, and my mom had bought my mom is a classically trained piano player. She was a music major in college. Nice. My dad got a bass from her for his birthday. And he was my dad wasn't too into punk rock as most well-to-do people were in the 80s. But he really liked, louder, I guess, kind of anti-authority music in general, or at least just like hard partying kind of stuff,
Yeah.
And one of those artists that he was really into was Tom Petty. And fortunately, Tom Petty wrote, I guess, rest in peace. Very, I guess, simple kind of music with really easy to understand hooks. And he was in their bedroom trying to play bass to I Won't Back Down off of Full Moon Fever. And I was 3, and I walked into his room because he wasn't very good at bass, and there was a lot of noise coming out of his room. And I asked him what he was doing, and he said, I'm learning how to play music by Tom Petty. Do you want to come and try it? And I said, yeah. And he picked me up and he put me on his knee and put the bass over the front of me and put my hands on the strings and showed me how to play it. And we listened to I Won't Back Down together, and he showed me how to play it. I was way too small to be able to play a bass at the time. But I remember that feeling like it was yesterday, like I said before.
I remember my first musical memory like it was yesterday too. So that's awesome, dude. I remember mine literally like it was yesterday. I can still smell the inside of the car.
Yeah. What were you listening to?
So my first musical memory is the Beach Boys' "Little Surfer" off of CBS FM.
Dude,
Yeah, I
Beach
was like,
Boys were the first concert I went to see live.
wow,
It was
that's
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah, when I
That's
was in second
awesome.
grade. Yeah, which Beach Boys tune were you listening to?
Little Surfer
Cool.
came on the radio, and that was the first time I heard music that it wasn't a cartoon theme song. And I was
How
like,
old were you?
wow. I was like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that changed my life.
Your parents were both driving the car. Where were you going when you listened?
We were on the Garden State Parkway in New Jersey, coming home from my aunt's house. The song came on right when we were passing the White Castle on Route I think it was Route 9, and I
A
heard
literal
that
castle or White Castle, the restaurant?
White Castle, the fast food chain, shitty burgers.
Excellent.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember everything about it. I remember the brown 1978 Cutlass Oldsmobile we were driving, and it was that big of a moment for me that's why I love to find out what other people's were, because it changed everything about where I went in my life with music.
Yep. Yeah, man. I saw the Beach Boys play with I saw Brian Wilson's Beach Boys.
Okay.
Not the other Beach Boys. He had John Stamos playing drums at the Wisconsin State Fair. He was wearing yellow hammer pants and running back and forth. And he never performed an entire song front to back. It was just like an hour-long insane medley of Beach Boys tunes. And it was pouring rain outside the whole time.
Yeah, there's actually there's Mike Love did a book and Brian Wilson did a book, and it's great to read both of their different, absolutely completely different perspectives on the band, that they were so big, such a big band. And it's funny to see how they both perceived everything.
Yeah. One I think was on a variety of strange chemicals handed to him by the Manson family, and the other one wasn't. That probably had something to do with it.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm a huge, I wouldn't say that I'm a huge Beach Boys fan, as in like I know all the facts and everything like that, but I got a soft spot for everything they do. I mean, fucking like Kokomo, even Late Period. And even though I know that song is bad, I still love it. How
can you not? The harmonies and the melodies and the hooks everything that they have is so brilliant, and it's so endearing to listen to their music, that when somebody's like, fuck the Beach Boys, I'd be like, no, fuck you. Like, you don't have an ear.
Yeah, man. Innovative in a lot of ways too. Like, I don't think, don't quote me, but I don't think that Phil Spector was, at least at the level of prominence that he was, like with End of the Century or something like that, when they recorded Pet Sounds. And I mean, to have an album that was just like as enormous sounding and composed as Pet Sounds, it had to have been just like a watershed moment kind of from like pop music in general at the time, when they made that. And that's so outside the scope of like, five white men with guitars on stage playing for like teenage girls, to have that kind of vision, and produce a record that was that, I guess, defiant of the time of what could be popular and what couldn't be. I don't think you might know a little bit better than me. Was Pet Sounds well received when it came out?
Absolutely not. It was their worst selling thing to date. Yeah, and it was what was funny, because Brian Wilson was back basically writing and doing everything himself, because the Beach Boys were on tour. And that was when Brian didn't want to travel anymore and had his, things he was dealing with. And he just didn't want to go. And he started creating this stuff. And then they came back from tour, they recorded it. And then they were the first people to hear it were actually the Beatles.
Yeah.
And, John Lennon heard a song and was just like, fuck, like this is the greatest thing ever. And then they put the album out, and everyone in the music industry shit on it.
Yep. I think that I've read that same story, and it's to hear about how it's like one of the greatest albums ever made now in retrospect.
Well, it's just like a lot of things. Like The Wizard of Oz was shit on when it came out, and it's a movie that if even a 2-year-old nowadays knows that movie.
Yeah.
It was not well received at all. But
Yeah.
some things need time to bake.
Yeah. I I think a lot of the time those are the greatest ones. I think you don't feel obligated to go and listen to, I guess, music that's challenging at the time. A lot of the time, I feel like, and it's nice that it's waiting there for you later on, I suppose.
Yeah, and it's good with music like that too, because I'll bring it harken back to like Nirvana's Nevermind. Like that came out, it changed everything. Everyone fucking loved it immediately. It was the greatest thing ever. I don't think I've listened to that album in 20 years.
I was just talking the other day, last night. The new Black Widow movie has that like awful like chorus arrangement of "Smells Like Teen Spirit" at the beginning of it.
Oh, no, I didn't see it yet.
Yeah, I've never been a huge Nirvana fan, and I think that's mostly like a product of growing up like in the late 90s, kind of, where everybody was trying to sound like Nirvana, and I heard everybody else first, like all these terrible ripoffs of the same sound, which kind of spoils the original one early on. That being said, even though I'm not a big fan of Nevermind, and I haven't really listened to that album front to back, maybe ever, just because I've heard the singles so many times on it. Friends of mine got me to listen to In Utero much later, after I decided that I didn't like Nirvana. And In Utero is an awesome album. That's a different story.
I 100% agree with you in everything you just how you put it. In Utero, they dropped a limited edition special vinyl with all these other hits off of it and all these lost tracks, and I listened to it and I was like, wait a minute, do I fucking like Nirvana now?
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's the thing about grunge, and I'm not a grunge expert by any stretch of the imagination. But the version of grunge that reached the Midwest where I grew up in like a small town right outside Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The version of grunge that reached Milwaukee was like Bush, like essentially, Bush and I don't know, like late period Pearl Jam and stuff like that. And you go and listen to the roots of grunge music, and dude, like it's just awesome, abrasive punk rock, that early stuff, like Mudhoney and
Mudhoney's early Soundgarden.
Man. Yeah, I was gonna say, and like Black Hole Sun's a great song, I think, but I was never too into Soundgarden, and like Audio Slave is pretty bad too. Rest in peace, Chris Cornell, regardless. But like all that early Soundgarden, In Utero, Nirvana, Mudhoney, early Pearl Jam, all that sort of like beginning of like probably mid 80s, like as far back as mid 80s, late 80s kind of sound that birthed like radio grunge is really, really awesome. And I didn't really revisit that until like I made some shitty comment about how like Nirvana sucks and I don't get it or something like that. No, actually, I remember what it was. We were making an album, or not an album, like we were recording a couple of songs with our friend Shane Hochstetler in Milwaukee. And Shane played in all these bands that I admired in the late 90s that were like mathier, kind of hardcore, emo kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He played in a band called Insidious. He played in another group called Hero of 100 Fights. And they all recorded with Steve Albini. And I thought that was really cool. And we were working with him, and I was punishing him about like all of these old groups that he used to play in. And somehow it came up that he was like a really big Pearl Jam fan. And I started making fun of him for liking Pearl Jam. And he was like, "No, man, you should like listen to early Pearl Jam records. And you're foolish if you can't get into it." And I forget the name of the record off the top of my head. It's one word. One Pearl Jam, or one word on a Pearl Jam record. I don't remember what it was.
10? The first one?
10. That's the one.
10?
Yeah. He played me 10 while we were there, and I couldn't believe it was the same band, like at all, and so that it's sort of, I guess, funny how shitting on something can kind of bring you around to listening to it again. Andrew WK is another example of it. Like I spent probably a summer talking shit about Andrew WK after I Get Wet came out, because I saw a video for Party Hard on MTV.
Yeah.
And I spent the whole summer like talking shit about Andrew WK, and then went and saw him live. And I think I Get Wet is probably like a top 5 record for me now, like period, out of everything. I don't think any of his other records kind of measure up. But
well, dude, his live show, I was told by a friend, and I had probably done the same thing with Andrew WK. I was like, yeah, I don't fucking get it, man. He's like, dude, I saw him live in Colorado. He's like, you got to see him. So when he came to New York City, I saw him at Irving Plaza, and when I walked out of the show, I go, maybe Andrew WK is my favorite artist of all time, because that was fucking awesome.
Isn't that crazy, dude? Yeah. I've seen Andrew WK probably 4 or 5 times now, and every single time is a totally different experience, and every single time it's amazing in one way or another. I saw him at Summerfest, which is like just a total like Miller Lite rock show of an event, with people like sitting on benches and buying like plastic cups of beer for like $7 a piece. Yeah. That was the first time I saw him. It was amazing. I didn't even get to stand on the floor. I stood up on a chair to watch it. It was still incredible. I saw him at a DIY show in Madison where he played out on a stage in the pouring rain with people like throwing mud at him and him throwing mud back. I saw him at like a TV taping in Chicago with like 20 other people. It was amazing there. I saw him spoken word in Madison with just him and a piano doing his like Tony Robbins shit live, which was incredible then too. He's an amazingly creative person.
Absolutely.
I think it was at the time, like when he sort of came up, it was sort of challenging, because like emo was really popular at the time. At that point, everybody was like very serious about their music, about their emotional exploration through their art. And he was like the one person that was out there like loud and proud proclaiming like everything's awesome, be positive, party, live life, all that stuff was really unfashionable to say at the time. And he had the guts to say it. And I was one of the people that talked shit on him for a few months before I let myself open up. His music, one of the very few artists I think that has really changed sort of my personality and my outlook and how I see music and art and self-awareness. Like and that record in particular, I Get Wet, I think is probably the big one. And I get into the lore with Andrew WK. I get into like reading all of his like self-help columns, all that kind of stuff. I think he's a very unique kind of person. And especially with like, I don't know if you've dove hard into the world of, power electronics or noise or anything like that. But even those projects were like, he's just experimenting with sound, and then bringing that back into sort of this like pop-minded sensibility, I guess, is cool too and inspiring. I just think he's the greatest. Beach Boys and Andrew WK. I'm glad we've gotten to cover both of those.
Yeah, I mean, I told you it would lead us down little different roads that we wouldn't know about. And that, yeah,
makes me wonder what he was doing during quarantine the entire time. Like what kind of insane shit he came up with.
God only knows. Like I wish he still had. I mean, he had that reality show for a little while. Like I wish he had like cameras in his house showing what he was doing during quarantine. Because I'm sure it's either fucking absolutely amazing or he's just laying on the couch in a white t-shirt with his underwear on. Like there's only 2 things that could be happening. Like, and that's it.
Yeah.
So we talked about Andrew WK being an amazing live performance. Do you have a live performance that you remember when it was over that you were like, that was our best performance, or a performance that you just absolutely loved that show that you performed at?
That Direct Hit did?
Yeah.
There's a lot of them, man. I'm a pretty self-aware and deprecating person, and so I always have the tendency to think that our live show sucks, and that I'm just grateful that everybody's there to put up with it.
I felt the
usually,
same way when I saw you. No.
I don't know. I think probably the one that comes to mind first was when we got to play Grows Rock in, I think that must have been 2016. Just because we hadn't had a chance to play a lot of like super enormous festivals at that point. Like I think we had played Riot Fest in 2015, so maybe it was Grows Rock 2015. I don't remember the year. Regardless, it was Grows Rock is over in Europe in it's either in Belgium or Luxembourg. It's between the two somewhere. All of our friends, we have a lot of friends in Belgium who are friends with this other group called the Price Duffkies. And so that was the festival that they always told us that they wanted us to play. So that was the one that we played. And, it's different being somebody from the US going over to Europe where, everybody speaks English, but it's a second language for most people and you don't speak their language at all. And, so you walk around a lot of the time and you don't understand a lot of the time what other people are saying. And especially during that tour that we did around it, like we were in France and Italy and a lot of these different places where most people were speaking a different language, and Grows Rock was sort of no exception. Most people there were European, obviously. And I remember getting up on stage and thinking, I'd talked with a couple of my friends about how I wouldn't know how to react to, seeing a band for the first time that didn't sing in the language that I was familiar with. I listen to some Japanese music and a lot of European music too, but a lot of it is translated into English or whatever. And we aren't able to provide that same courtesy. Cause I'm a terrible white guy from the US and can't speak a different language. And so we got on stage and started playing, and I just remember there were probably 2,000 or 3,000 people watching us, which was an enormous crowd bigger than we'd ever been used to, this giant tent in a field. And everybody's talking in, Flemish or French or Italian or German or whatever all around us. And we started playing, and I just remember we started our first song, and suddenly not every single person in the crowd, but I could hear all the words in English for my music getting shouted back to me from a bunch of different people that didn't even, take English as a first language.
Yeah.
And
it's a universal language. That's what music is. It's a universal language.
Right. But I mean, when I listen to something like, I don't know, do you listen to Police X at all? They're a Japanese band, Japanese noise band. Yeah. Yep. So I don't fucking know anything that they're talking about in that music. I'd have to go through, or if you listen to K-pop or something where the choruses a lot of the time are in English, but the verses aren't, then you got to go and figure out what they're singing about in the first place. Even though music speaks to people across, any kind of gap, I would say, it was still sort of a magical thing for me, I guess, to see and feel that connection on stage with that large of a group of people. It made me feel like I was definitely a part of something bigger than myself, or that I'd gotten to create something that had kept growing, that it grew past even my own understanding of it. I have no idea how it reached that far, I guess. And that was sort of one of those moments that was just a culmination of all that. It made me step back after that show and just think about how lucky I was and about how fortunate I am and how validating it is to be able to do what I do. So yeah, that's a long-winded way of answering your question.
No, yeah, it's a sobering awakening. Wow. Yeah. Okay. This isn't for nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you now, when you've played a lot of shows, so I'm sure it'll be a hard question for you, but is there a band that you ever played with, or, that opened for you or you opened for them, that just blew you away and you just stood back and said, holy fuck?
I mean, there's been a few examples of that over time. The first time I saw Masked Intruder was a big one. Just because I'd known those guys for a really long time at that point. They kind of gave us our start in Madison, Wisconsin, because they lived in a house that they let us play at. And when I saw their new band for the first time, that was definitely a moment of, this is amazing. Pears was another example of it, where I saw them play for the first time, and knew that they were incredible. We got to open for, I think, 10 days on a tour with Wilhelm Scream one time. I'd never listened to a Wilhelm Scream. Watching them play was ridiculous. There's been a lot of those cases. It's a big part of what keeps me interested in listening to new music is, it's sort of like Bitcoin, where there's less Bitcoin generated every year. I feel like, because I've listened to so much music at this point, it's hard to mine for new music, but you lust after that feeling of hearing something for the first time and instantly connecting with it, knowing that it's awesome and that you're going to listen to it for the rest of your life.
I search for it every day.
Yeah.
That's why I spend so much time searching for new music, because that feeling of finding something that you've never heard before, it's a drug. It's my drug of choice. And I go hard after it, and I spend a lot of time searching for music, because when I find something that I've never heard before and I just get to sit back and listen to it, and it really is, it's euphoric. It's amazing. It's such a feeling.
Yeah, man. I totally agree. And even if you don't, when you listen to music in different contexts, or you watch it being performed, the change in just the environment that you're in when you hear it can change too. There's a lot of like classical music, for example. My mom's really into classical music, and so I've been to the symphony a few times, and I don't listen to classical music when I'm at home. Just on a stereo or something like that. But, you go and you watch 100 top of their game musicians perform just really anything, and it's hard to not be impressed by that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times when, you watch somebody play something on an acoustic guitar in a public place or something, and that's not all that cool, but you listen to the quality of those recordings when you go home, and there's something different about that, of being able to hear them on record that makes it cooler. Music takes a lot of different forms, as everybody is aware. And, I think the stories and the context behind it are often as important as the music itself.
100%.
Yeah. I was talking with my daughter actually about this the other day. There, that Hawaiian, what's his name? Israel Akia Kawawale.
Yeah.
Something like that. He does that version of
Over the Rainbow.
Yeah. Yeah. With Louis Armstrong song at the end of it too.
Yep.
It's a Wonderful World.
Wonderful World. Yeah.
And, I've heard that song a million times, and I had heard that version of that song a million times.
Thanks for giving me goosebumps, by the way, because Over the Rainbow is by Ray Charles, is my wedding song. And then when my wife and I renewed our vows, we did the Israel version.
So. Yeah. Is it Ray Charles or Louis Armstrong that does It's a Wonderful World?
That's Louis Armstrong, but Ray Charles covered. Right. Yeah, you got that right. Yeah.
All right, good. Regardless, like I liked that song, but it's Over the Rainbow. Like, you've heard it a million times from a bunch of, like, Kermit does a version of it, and Kermit's version was my favorite version, for a long time. And I read a little bit about that because my kid was asking me like who recorded this song, and she likes to ask like really innocuous questions like who recorded or who sings this song and what's the song about. And it's like, it's Over the Rainbow. How do you answer what is this song about? It's Over the Rainbow, And she asked me she had asked me what the song, like, I don't remember what the question was. Where did he make the song? Because she has a musician dad who's constantly talking about where songs were made, and it's always studios.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know. And she said, can you tell me? And I said, okay. I looked up the Wikipedia page, and I started reading the story of that recording a little bit. And that's a tune that was recorded entirely as a sound check. Like, he didn't even, like, he sat down on a chair and somebody had turned a microphone on to test like what it was going to sound like when he started singing. And so they were adjusting things and whatever. And I guess the story is that he got, a verse into that tune, and the guy who was behind the booth just let him keep going. He did press stop on the tape recorder. Because he knew that there was something about what he was doing that was magical, And so I've been getting really into finding songs that were recorded not as B-sides even or produced in regular, but just recorded accidentally that have become famous. You know, that's one of them. Another one is fuck, and now I'm not going to be able to remember it off the top of my head. Give me 2 seconds of silence.
You got it.
Ako Ako Aye, that song.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you.
Yeah, I know that song. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another sound check song. You know, everybody climbed into a booth, you know, to start checking vocals, and they just let the tape recorder keep going. Because they were just, I think somebody had like a pair of spoons or a tambourine or something in with them, but like that's sort of like a defining song a little bit. You know, it made in New Orleans. It was like a traditional version that sort of just made its way to that place and became what it is today, you know, and connected with a lot of different people. And it was the context and the story behind it that were just kind of an accident that made it really interesting, I think, now.
Yeah. I think Tom Cruise in Cocktail made that song okay.
What was that?
I said I think Tom Cruise in Cocktail made that song okay.
Yeah, that's right. Or Michael Jackson's vocal demo of Beat It. Have you ever heard that before?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, like it's another version of that song that gives that just so much more meaning. You know, it's not even a new tune, but you know, I love the vocal demo of Beat It a lot, you know. And it's all because of the context and the story that's behind it, you know. So I think there's a lot of different ways to discover new music, and they come in unexpected ways, I think. Lately, that's just been one of the ways that I've been sort of trying to find new stuff to listen to that I haven't heard before. So
nice. Now, you guys released a single this year. And was that one of your some catharsis for you during quarantine too with Hollow Comfort, or was that done before?
No, we actually put out 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 recordings this year, as a matter of fact. And yeah, no, that was recorded during quarantine. We had a couple of sessions where everybody got together, you know, to do live streams, just to be able to do something kind of. And usually whenever we were around, I'd take whatever song was at the top of my head that I'd been working on, and we'd do a version of it. And it was sort of my way of, you know, experimenting with learning how to produce music in the first place. Because I didn't know very much about it before quarantine started. And I think you can kind of hear it as I sort of went along, getting a little bit better and thinking a little bit harder each time around. And Hollow Comfort was the last one that we made. That was written, the melody at least was written by a friend of mine, and we rearranged it and recorded that version of it. And I wrote the lyrics, you know, is sort of a familiar trope from what a lot of people, I guess, were experiencing at the time about that sort of need for actual human contact and not just video ones over the internet, you know. And so it's sort of a wrap up song about, I guess, all of the anxieties that you feel when you're that immersed in the internet, I think. You know, who am I? Am I really friends with the people that I think I'm friends with? Because we never get to see each other in person. Who's watching all of this the whole time? You know, that feeling of missing out where you're even during quarantine, that was one thing that didn't change. Everybody is posting versions of their best life and not the reality of their life, which a lot of the time is like curled up in the fetal position on the ground, you know, wondering when life is going to be normal again. You know, and so I sort of tried to wrap all of that up into the words in that tune. But everybody was around that weekend to record versions of it. I think Devin and Joram did their parts on their computers at home after we ran through it together. But yeah, I recorded Logan's drums. I recorded my own vocals and my guitars and Maura's vocals and guitars while she was up here too. So we've made kind of a habit of that. We just got together last week actually to record demos for what we hope is going to be a new album. We had enough tunes. I mean, that was a big part of it. We had enough tunes probably halfway through quarantine to make a new record, and we'd been planning on it, you know, and obviously there wasn't really the motivation or the time or the resources to be able to make that happen.
Yeah.
So instead, we just recorded demos and put them up when we had a chance. It felt a lot like when we were first starting out, when we were just recording for fun and putting stuff on the internet for whoever wanted to hear it, and not really trying to make a big deal out of making albums or something like that. That's was sort of our mentality over the last year, is just recording when we could and putting stuff up when we could. And that was kind of the product of it, I guess.
Now, if someone had never heard anything from Direct Hit, like say an alien came to Earth and wanted to know what this band was about, what one song of yours would you play for them that would best describe?
Oh man, I'd play Welcome to Heaven probably.
Okay.
Would be my pick. I think that was the first single that we did off of Crown of Nothing, which was our last album. I like to talk about abstract and unexplainable and infinite oriented stuff in our music in a package that's really easy to digest. And I think a lot of groups try to do that. But I think that the lyrics in that song encapsulate a lot of the themes that I tend to ruminate on with my music and my art. If you want to call it art, I like to call it entertainment. My music and my entertainments, my content. I'm trying to remember the tunes off the top of my head. I mean, the biggest reason why it is that I like that song a lot is because my kid likes that song a lot and she asks to hear it all the time. And so I have to like embarrassedly like play it for her in the car a lot of the time because she won't let it go. It's when she asks what that song is about, it's always difficult for me to answer it. One, because I think it's a really kind of scary concept for a 5-year-old to try and grasp. But it's all about not just our relationships with each other, love and affection and hatred and anger and very human kind of things that we feel. It's more about our relationship with the universe and the infinite nature or the near infinite nature of the universe. Not only in like the physical world, but in the ways that we, Wasted Mind's like an example of it, the way that we interact with our own minds, and about how like the physical world doesn't even really need to exist in a lot of ways because there's a universe inside each and every one of us to explore. I think I talk about time in that song and about like the infinite expanse of time and how, the universe it's not only one place, it's an infinite number of places traveling an infinite distance over an infinite period of time. All this is making me sound like, an insane person, and maybe I am. But it's always been very sort of difficult for me to express that awe and that, those thoughts and those, I guess, anxieties and all that touchy feely stuff, not just about other people, but about, existence in general. And I think that song kind of encapsulates it really well. There's a lyric in at the beginning of it. I'm trying to think how it starts. So welcome to heaven, just a state of dumb contentment, where we're all alone in blackness, floating on a cognizant cloud of ash is all we are. At all in this bitter alternative where our spirit kicks back, teaches lessons to those who keep on and on and on and on. In another world, it's all we are. I can't remember it off the top of my head without a guitar in my hand. But yeah, I mean, that the cognizant cloud of ash is all we are. I think sort of encapsulates existence, I guess. And it's tough to kind of put that into words for me a lot of the time. Physically, we're all just mostly empty space with a bunch of particles that bounce off of each other, and that's eventually what creates matter and our energy. And what does that really mean for mine and your piddly ass problems the day of? There's way bigger things to think about. And so you can either listen to our music as, a 1-4-5 pop punk progression, Or if you want to, and you really want to go deep in it and think about it a lot, there's avenues to do that. And I think lyrically, that's really what I strive for and what I write. And Welcome to Heaven is the most, I guess, prescient example of that I can think of.
All right. So if you would play that for someone, would you say that that's your favorite release that you've ever put out?
Crown of Nothing is my favorite release that we've put out. Yes.
Okay.
I like all of our records a lot. But I mean, there's stuff that I would go back and change about them, or, I've become, a better songwriter, or I've experienced certain things where, the lyrics I don't feel are as poignant as they could be. You listen to Dome Splitter, I feel like that's just really the sound of a band, like sort of, or our band, I guess just doing something, for the first time, trying to be as loud as possible and obnoxious as possible. And you listen to Brainless God, and that's more of like a grandiose thing where I wanted to be able to tell a story with a record, even more than I wanted to create a catchy record. And then after that, Wasted Mind came out, and that was sort of like I want to say almost like a summary or a polish on what we had sort of learned over the previous two records. And Crown of Nothing was much more about experimentation, and trying out brand new things without really having a regard for the consequence of trying them, desperately sort of searching for something that was new and different. And I was really proud of the outcome of that record. I think it's probably our least listened to album. But I think that it was a communal effort. There's probably 15 or 20 different musicians, friends of mine, that we brought on to play on it. I think that it doesn't sound like many other pop punk records if you listen to it closely enough. I think the themes on it are more in line with the ones that I told you about. I think there's much deeper meaning behind it than a lot of our other records. We made a comic book around it that sort of visualizes it and puts what's a pretty abstract story behind that record into focus. I think it was the first album that I felt like didn't exist until after I worked on it. It wasn't borrowing from anything else. I wasn't referencing many other things, maybe tones or things like that I had heard, but there were always other sort of influences, I think, on previous records. Like you can hear like the Auld Lang Syne hook that we use all the time in Brainless God. There was none of that on that record. I wanted it to be completely different and myself, and I think it was.
It could be your pet sounds, man.
Yeah, that's right. It's my pet sounds.
There you go.
I had a friend down the street one time who had another friend over who told me that he was making his own pet sounds in his basement, and then I turned around and got another drink. So don't tell me that. It's not my pet sounds.
Now, going through music as you have, and know it'll be hard to do, and I'm sure you've been asked this question before, but do you have a favorite band that you've always counted on, that you just are like, hey, this is my favorite? I have three for three different times. It's three different types of music, so I allow myself to have three if somebody asks me, and you can have more than one. But do you have a favorite band?
No, definitely not. I've got favorite records for sure. I don't think that there's in terms of like recorded output that like has always been good or always connected with me. I think Tom Petty would probably have to be number one for me. And we talked about that. My first musical memory, it connects back to my very first musical memory. I don't think he's put out a bad record. I think there's different records. There's records of his that I would place other records above.
Yeah, you enjoy them a little less than the other ones that you enjoy more, and that's fine.
Yeah, and there's other artists that have put out records that are better than certain Tom Petty records, and so then the question is like, how much more do I like that album than one of these? So does that mean I like this artist more? But I think Tom Petty wrote very simple music that connected not without any kind of pretentiousness. He saw himself as, as a bar band leader, kind of, in a lot of ways. It seemed like he was always had some degree of humility whenever he spoke about his music or about himself. He didn't suck up too much oxygen in the air. There was never a period in my life where like Tom Petty had a new record out and that was all I could fucking hear or see was Tom Petty. He was just always there in the background for me, to remind me of that first moment when I connected with rock music when I was a kid. And he has so many songs that I like. When I listen to his music, it's like time stands still around me. And so I guess I probably have to say that at this point in my life, then Tom Petty is my favorite artist. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers would be my favorite.
The way you just explained it, you just figured out yourself that Tom Petty is your favorite.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Tom Petty is probably my favorite artist. I've had more, as far as like intense attachments to groups before. Metallica would probably be the one that would be up there for me too, just because I was so immersed in Metallica land when I was in middle school, enough so that it still carries over today. I still listen to the Black Album and Master of Puppets, and I gave Death Magnetic a chance, and it was a good record even after the nightmare that was Saint Anger. That if you're looking for, so if we need like three, Tom Petty and Metallica would be up there. And I would honestly probably put Andrew WK as my third one, just because I Get Wet is my favorite record. I think. Nice. I Get Wet's my favorite record, as far as like the quality of the music, the way it makes me feel, the story behind it, the contexts that I've enjoyed it in. If he made my favorite record, then he probably has to be a top 3 artist for me. Yeah. So.
All right, now let's go to something else. Do you have something that we'll label as guilty pleasure, but something that you listen to that somebody would be really, really surprised that you get a lot of enjoyment out of, like the Wiggles or something? I mean, you got a young daughter, but is there like we call it a guilty pleasure, something that you're just like, I love this, and you don't care who knows, but you still care a little bit at times?
ZZ Top, maybe. That would probably be up there.
All right.
ZZ Top is a pretty stupid concept, and they've made a lot of really stupid music, but I love all their stuff too.
That's awesome. I don't understand ZZ Top. I'm with you. Like I don't get it, but I'm not with you to the point where I like it. Like I'm just like, yeah, no, I don't
like bad blues music, kind of. Yeah. But at the same time, like I don't know.
But they figured it out, man. They figured it out.
Awesomely like dopey behind like three white guys with beards playing blues music with like techno behind them for some reason, but it's all catchy, it's all catchy, and they have a shtick, and I don't know. They don't seem like they're too utterly full of themselves. So I can appreciate that.
Nice. So let's, we've been going at this for a while, and I don't want to keep you all day. I know you got a lot of other stuff going on in your life. So we're going to come in here, and I got just a couple more questions. So what's up next for you guys? What's coming up next? I know you said you're hopefully got some shows in August. You guys looking at releasing some more new music and just getting back out on the road? And how do you feel about getting back out on the road?
Well, I mean, a new album's been on my mind for the last 18 months. So I like to think that a new album is around the corner. We definitely have enough songs for it. Just a matter of being able to figure out when we should make it, and other than that, we've got 3 shows booked at the end of August. And I am nervous to see if we can still play together as a cohesive unit. And give people a show that they like. And other than that, I think that's pretty much it, man. We're taking it step by step. None of us want to get our hopes up about like the world being exactly the same as it was before we started,
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the hardest thing right now.
Before quarantine started, And so I think we're just trying to sort of, feel like we're starting from scratch, almost like we're starting a new band, and just kind of see where we're at with stuff on the other side of this, now that it's been a year and a half since we've been a band, essentially, so I guess keep an eye out for that. Tell your listeners to keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, no, we definitely will. And you talked about it earlier, and this is, one of the last things that I like to ask is, because you already touched upon it, and if it were to all end tomorrow and Direct Hit was no more, how would you most like the band to be remembered?
How would I like our band to be remembered? Good question. 2 seconds. I'm not sure that I would want our band to be remembered as human people, I think, more than anything. I've talked to enough people at our merch table and, at houses that we've stayed after shows and things like that. But what I get most out of playing in our group and touring has been the formative experience of getting to see how a much larger group of people than I would have otherwise experienced live their lives, and what their fears are and what their dreams are and what their concerns are and what they laugh about. And, I grew up privileged and in a small town. And when you only get a view of those, I had 11,000 people that lived there. When you only get to see a culture of 11,000 people, it's hard to get a good, this is looking back, it was hard for me to get a good idea of what the world was actually like. And when I say what the world is actually like, I really mean what the world is actually like. The most valuable part of going on tour, especially for me, is being able to see, how people live their lives, like what kind of food they eat and who their friends are that I don't know. And, have a more intimate relationship with humanity at large than just, your friends and your family that you've met because you went to school.
Yeah.
And I hope that the meeting me and meeting my band doesn't give you the impression that we are different than anybody else. Everybody likes to make stuff and create stuff and express themselves in ways that they can't through just like regular conversation like we are having. And I want that part of our band reflected. And I think our music is the vehicle that kind of gets us to that point, but it's not the end all be all of who I am as a person. And I want people to think of me as a musician, but also, a person like them. I'm no bigger than they are. I'm no smaller than they are. This is just kind of a thing that I do. And I want our music to remind them of who I was as I'll do it in the past tense after I'm dead. I want it to remind them of who I was as a person and the kind of things that I thought about. And not just, how wasted that they got at the Direct Hit show in 2006, so.
Well said. So we end our shows with our weekly threes, and it's 3 things you're listening to right now. Could be new or old or something completely off the wall. It's totally fine. But 3 things you're listening to that, someone should know about.
New music?
It does anything. 3 things that you're listening to.
Let me think. What are things that I've been listening to? I always listen to music in my car a lot of the time. I listen to TikTok music these days mostly. I like Tierra Whack a lot. I like Princess Nokia a lot. And I like Limbeck a lot, I think. Those are probably my 3.
I love Limbeck.
Yeah, I do too. A bunch. John, their drummer, is an old friend of mine, and he's responsible in a lot of ways for helping us to bring our band to a lot more people. And he always records new music for me, or records new music and then sends it to me. And it's always made me go back to his band and listen to him. I like that group a lot.
I absolutely love that fucking group. It's one of those bands. It's a hidden track. It's a hidden band that people need to fucking hear.
Yeah, definitely.
So my 3 for this week, my first one is a band called Tradewind, rock band made up of members of Stick to Your Guns, Structure, Straight from the Past. They have an album called The Day We Got What We Deserved. Really cool to check out. Number 2 is Misplaced. It's a Glasgow pop punk band. The album's called FFs. It's really cool to check out. And last but not least, Everyone Everywhere, Philly emo band, self-titled album, Everyone Everywhere. Check it out for people who want something new to listen to.
Hell yeah.
So, Nick, why don't you take this time to tell your fans, tell our fans how to find what Direct Hit's doing, how to keep up with everything you're doing, throw out all your social content stuff and labels and shit on how to find your stuff.
Fuck social networks, for the record. But if you want to do that, check us out on Instagram at Direct Hit Band. You can go on Facebook. Facebook's a terrible network. If you have an account, you should quit. We're at Direct Hit Band there too. We're on Twitter at directhit_sucks. But probably the best thing for you to do is to go to crownofnothing.com and check us out there. That's our website. That's our voice. Mark Zuckerberg doesn't fucking listen to everything you do there. Fake news doesn't get spread there. Check that out instead.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here, Nick. And, for everyone out there, you know what to do. Listen to Direct Hit. Go out and have a great fucking time.
We like to think that life's a dream, that all that makes us less than's a camera on TV screen. But what if waking up meant turning yourself off? Would what you're left to live with still be close enough? Would looking at ourselves through a different kind of lens than glass or plastic drive us to the edge of insanity? And still that red eye in the sky keeps blinking on and off and on, a sinking feeling manifested in the dark. We're all uneasy, knowing that we're watched, yeah, we're uneasy, desperate to control how we appear to ourselves. It's hollow comfort knowing we're not alone.
Thanks again for tuning into the Hidden Tracks podcast. We hope you enjoyed this week's show. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at HiddenTracks99. Also, send all your submissions myhiddentracks99@gmail.com. Tune in next week. You may find your new favorite band, and don't forget to go out and have a great fucking time.